This week's parsha is Becha Alotcha, it's a long one, long name, which is initiating the journey of the Israelites down from Mount Sinai and towards the promised land. And as it often does, our parsha this week actually is in alignment with where we're at also on our calendrical cycle. So these weeks following Shavuot in the month of Sivan that we're in right now is the time that follows that peak experience of revelation, right? So it's a time of integration, of bringing the lessons that we may have learned from what was revealed in that peak experience and that direct encounter into our mundane everyday lives. One of the things that I love and find so helpful in the guidance from the Jewish spiritual tradition is the way that in Judaism, in our calendrical cycle, there is a time and a place for the peak experience, right? For those closer, more direct encounters with the divine. And there's also a time to rest into the mundanity, the everydayness of our lives, because that's where we really live our lives, right? We ascend the mountain to feel that closeness, to stand in that light of divine glory, and we revel there. But it's not where we live, right? We inevitably descend, we return. There's the old Buddhist adage, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Or I love the title of the Buddhist teacher and Jewish, he's also Jewish, Jack Kornfield. He wrote a book called After the Ecstasy, the Laundry, which is all about this, how we climb up that mountain, have that peak experience, and then we return to our lives and we integrate. So acknowledging that there is a time and a place for the highs as well as the descent is fundamental to the Jewish understanding of the soul trait or the midah of humility or anava. Anava. So this trait of anava, often translated as humility, is not just about playing small. It's more fully understood as taking up the right amount of space, sitting in your rightful seat. It's that sensibility or capacity to bring balance through your presence to the situation at hand. So in some moments, this might really look like stepping back, right? Giving space for others to share their voices, to take the reins. Whereas in other moments, it actually really might mean stepping forward and standing up. It all depends on what will bring balance to the situation in the moment. And with anava, we recognize that there are moments of that kind of divine closeness and ascension and glory. And there are moments of descent and of regularity and mundanity. As it says in Ecclesiastes and Kohelet, there's a season for everything, right? Everything blooms in its season. Nothing blooms all year round. And we also recognize that these ascents and descents, the moments of ecstasy or the moments of the laundry, the moments of taking up space, of exercising our power, and the moments of making space for others and stepping back, we recognize that these experiences are not at all separate. That when these actions come from that true place of anava, they relate to one another to create balance and harmony within our lives and in our relationships as we grow in our awareness. Our parsha says, "V'ha'ish Moshe anav me'od." Now Moses himself was very humble, and anav me'od. Mikol ha'adam asher el pnei ha'adama, more so than any other human being upon the earth. The great prophet Moses was very, very humble. This was one of his essential qualities, and this humility was directly connected to his great reputation, the way that he's known as the greatest prophet there ever was. This quality of humility is so essential when we find ourselves in positions of leadership, or if we are seeking to be true avadim Hashem, real servants of the divine. And an essential part of this humility is recognizing our limitations. So even Moses could not do it alone. In this parsha, he becomes extremely overwhelmed by the seemingly endless complaints of the people. And he says to the divine, I cannot carry all this people by myself. It's too much for me. It's too much for me. So in response, God appoints 70 elders among the people of Israel to help Moses hold this burden of leadership. It says, V'nasu itcha b'masa ha'am, they shall share the burden of the people with you. V'lo tisa ata levadecha, and you shall not bear it alone. You shall not bear it alone. In our mystical tradition, anava is associated with the Sephirah Tiferet, the soul trait of Tiferet, which is the heart and compassion and beauty. It brings reconciliation and balance to what might seem like opposing forces of restraint and boundary and loving kindness. And so when we are wondering how we can access anava, or what would be the most humble response to bring balance to a situation, we might ask ourselves, what would be the most compassionate response right now? Or even, what would be the most beautiful response? Even in a challenging situation, is there some beauty that can be found? Or is there some way that my way of relating to this situation can actually be beautiful in some way? And I want to lead us into our sit today, a little meditation on anava with the Hasidic story of Reb Simcha Bunim, who was an 18th century Hasidic Rebbe. And he was known to carry 2 slips of paper with him, one in each pocket. One of those papers was inscribed with the saying from the Talmud, Bishvili nivra ha'olam, for my sake, the world was created. So that sense of greatness, of importance, I matter. For my sake, this world was created. On the other, he wrote a phrase from our ancestor Abraham in the Torah, V'anochi afar ve'efer, I am but dust and ashes. He would take out and read one of those slips of paper, depending on what he needed to remember in each moment. So on the one hand, for my sake, the world was created. On the other hand, I am but dust and ashes. And which one of those truths will bring balance, will serve us in any given moment? So we'll do a little meditation here together on anava. So I want to invite you to relax into a posture in the body that will be supportive of mindful presence. So you might close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you, or soften your gaze. Invite the body to soften and relax as we invite ourselves to arrive more fully here to this moment. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. Just settling into presence, the way things are. And at the same time, sensing our wakefulness, our uprightness. We're not here to zone out, but to wake up to our lives. So finding that balance between relaxation and ease, and wakefulness, alertness. Allow the attention to rest on the breath or somewhere in the body. As we continue settling in and arriving here in the present. Noticing whatever is present here today, the body and the heart, the mind. Can we just gently soften, allowing whatever is here to be here, just as it is? Nothing to fix or control in our experience. As we deepen into our sit, I'm going to invite a brief contemplation on each of these phrases, each of these truths, as we find that balanced place between them. Bishvili nivra ha'olam. For my sake, the world was created. For my sake, the world was created. What does it feel like to open to the truth of our importance, our significance, our magnificence? Feel our power. For my sake, the world was created. Noticing whatever arises in response to that contemplation. There's no right or wrong. Noticing what it stirs. For my sake, this world was created. What does it feel like to know ourselves and our importance and our bigness? Turning towards the other truth. V'anochi afar ve'ether. I am but dust and ashes. The tradition teaches that we are born of the earth, the dirt, created of the dirt, and we will return to the dirt. I am but dust and ashes. What does it feel like to step back? Know ourselves and our smallness, our transience. And there's no right or wrong response, just noticing with kindness what is stirred. I am but dust and ashes. What would it mean for both of these ideas to be true at the same time? I am but dust and ashes. And for my sake, this world was created. Sit in the seat of balance that holds both of those truths. As they manifest uniquely in each moment. Inviting in this quality of anava as we settle in deeper to our practice together. whatever is here, whatever is arising in the mind or the heart, the body. What would it mean to bring that quality of anava, of balance, of compassion, of beauty in the way that we relate to this experience, moment by moment, as it emerges. We'll end our sit together with 5 deep breaths. And imagine inhaling into the heart space. It's that heart, the wisdom of our heart, chokhmat halev, on its own knows how to bring anava, meet the moment with wisdom. Noticing what is here, the body, the heart. And gently open your eyes when you're ready, if they've been closed. Thank you all so much for your presence here today, for your practice. And may we all be blessed as we enter Shabbat with this quality of anava, and that we can trust the wisdom of our own hearts and of our bodies to lead the way in helping us meet whatever whatever is happening in our lives with that balance of humility, with that balance of our bigness, our power, our significance, and also our humility, our willingness to step back, to listen, to be led, to ask for help. Thank you all again so much for joining us today. We now will recite the Mourner's Kaddish. So if any of you are in mourning or observing a yort site, or if it is your practice to participate in Kaddish, this is the time for you to do so in community. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, you're welcome to stay present and offer your compassion to those who are in mourning. If you are observing Kaddish, you're welcome to put the names of anyone you're remembering in the chat. We will share the words of Kaddish on the screen. And if you're reciting, I invite you to unmute yourself and join me in body or in spirit to rise as we recite these words together.
Amen. Amen.
Yet Barak Yeshua Man Say Yetadar Yetala Yetala Shmini Shah Riflu Elam
Amen. Amen.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. For those of you who are leaving now, we wish you good health and a Shabbat Shalom. We hope to see you again on Monday at the same time. And those of you who would like to are welcome to stay on here to ask any questions or to share your reflection on today's teaching and meditation. So you're welcome to just place any reflections or questions in the chat box. And if it is a question, please put question in all capital letters before your question. And since Mark isn't here to moderate, I'll kind of moderate myself. So just appreciate your patience. So again, feel free to share if anybody has any reflection or any question here in the chat. So thank you, Linda, for this reflection. I find it easy to relate to the idea of balance. I find it harder to relate to the idea that the world was created for me seems so big. It is a big idea. It is a big idea. And I think one of the invitations of a contemplation, like a contemplative practice, is not to say that like, this is true, but what does it stir for you, right? That's just a way to work with an idea like that, if that were to be true. If we can just take it in as a contemplation, as a possibility, just noticing what it brings up for us and what it stirs can be quite insightful. Thanks, Linda. From Lori, Alan Moranis on Anava, no more than my place, no less than my space. Yeah. So from Gail, what do you suggest on days when my mind will not stop or slow down at all? Yeah, so that very active, restless mind is definitely a very common experience that I'm sure many of us can relate to throughout our meditative practices when that's present. And I think that the mind, when it's in that state, gets into that state often for a lot of different reasons. I know for myself, if the mind is particularly active and restless, it can feel really, really hard to meditate in a seated posture. And in that case, I might actually recommend some mindful movement practice. I know for myself, when there's really a lot of restlessness in the mind, sometimes going on a walk or a run or doing yoga or something more dynamic and active can really help to bring balance there. And you can absolutely bring the same quality of mindful presence and intentionality to movement practices as well. So, I think for me, it's definitely always insightful to notice when I am able to really move energy through the body in whatever way the body might be asking for, and whatever way is accessible and possible with the current state of my body, to notice then the impact on the mind state, because often our bodies and minds and our emotional experience are kind of different dimensions of the same thing. They're manifesting a similar energy in a different way. From Pam, this thought-provoking helped me to identify a spiritual imbalance, since it was much easier for me to embrace dust and ashes. That's a great insight. A question from Lori. I struggle to relate to the world was created for me, but find it easy to relate to the dust idea. What is a healthy way to embody the former? Yeah. So I think with any of these ideas, the idea of humility, that is the stepping back, the slowing down, the listening, and also the place of really sitting in a seat of strength and power and taking up space and sharing our voices. The whole idea with Anava, and part of why I find it so helpful, is that those ways of being are totally dependent on their context, right? So it's like, when is the situation actually calling for either one of those? And when that response is in attunement with what's happening in the situation, that's when it brings balance and when it is really helpful. At the same time, when it's out of attunement, when it's not really what's needed, it could actually cause harm or not be so skillful and wise. I'm sure we can all relate to the experience of either ourselves or someone else really taking up space and taking agency and displaying power when actually maybe it was someone else's time to do so, right? At the same time, if we're always playing it small, or maybe there's a situation that's really calling upon us to kind of garner that courage and share our voices and stand up for something, and if we are shying away from that, we might be missing out, and the world might be missing out on our power and our confidence in that moment. And so I might suggest, Lori, as far as what is a healthy way to really embody that sense of like our importance and our significance and our power, I would just encourage you to reflect on, either in your own life or in maybe role models or people you admire, where do you see that sense of integrity and kind of power modeled in a way that feels healthy to you? Or where have you experienced that before in your life? And what was the situation? What was the context? What was that in response to? So I know, for myself, I find it much easier to really understand how these different postures are healthy when I can fully appreciate them in their context. And one thing that I really appreciate about our tradition, the wisdom of the Jewish tradition, is that like part of what it means that we are magnificent and glorious is that we are B'Tselem Elohim, that we are created in the divine image. So really embodying and acknowledging that magnificence of our being isn't about just being really self-absorbed. It's actually it's really about God ultimately. Ultimately, what we're really praising and celebrating is the way that the divine manifests through each one of us uniquely. So, let's see. Wow, so many amazing questions and reflections here. I might not get to all of them. Let me just read what's here. Reflection from Nancy. In holding both truths, I came to the idea that the world was created as an expression of divinity, which includes everything, dust, ashes, and me. Yeah, beautiful, Nancy. I love that. It's like the world contains it all, dust and ashes and swampy muck and like magnificent sunsets and Mount Everest and everything in between. Hmm. From Lester, was it described as to which pocket the slips were in? I first imagined the creation in the left and the dust in the right, perhaps because of reading left to right. Then I realized Hebrew goes the other way, so I shifted, and then I juggled them back and forth. That left me with focus on the center. I am this and that. I am beautiful. Yeah, and that Hasidic story about Reb Simcha Bunim, it doesn't specify which pocket contained which note, but certainly something to play with and explore. Mm. From Harris, this meditation called to mind and heart, I'm Not Alone by Ali Halpert. Beautiful song. I really recommend it. You can find it on Spotify. The lyrics are, I forgot for a minute who I belong to, the Mama Earth, the wind and rain, the beauty and the pain. I'm not alone. For me, the world was created. I'm not alone. To dust I will return. Beautiful. Let's see, I think there was one other question. Question from Sandra. I want to know more about the elders, please. Yeah, so this is a really rich part of our parsha. This whole parsha is really rich. There's a lot in this one. So the elders are chosen from among the people of Israel, and God says, these elders are gonna share the burden with you, and through being around you, basically your wisdom, Moshe, your spirit will rest upon them so that they will be able to access prophecy in the way that you access prophecy. And it's really, I think part of that is pointing us to consider that prophecy, or really that act of being in direct communion with God and kind of becoming a channel for the divine, is not something that is only reserved for the Moshes among us or for the leaders among us, but it's something that every human being has capacity for and can learn to utilize with wisdom. At the same time, different people among us we all have different jobs, right? We all have different gifts to bring to our communities, and that's certainly something that is surfaced in a strong way in this parsha, that Moses has a special job and he has special unique gifts, and everyone does, and they're all different. They all have an important part to play. And it's really, again, it's really emphasizing that it's Moses' humility, that he really does not make it about him. It's not about, he doesn't even choose his role. When God tells him to go to Egypt and set the people free, he's like, oh God, not me, he has so much humility. His ego is not running the show. And that is so, not only so central and important to what makes him such an incredible prophet, but also not so common. It's actually not so simple and not so easy to really get out of our own ways in that way, to have enough kind of, it's almost like just that it's that deep sense of service to the greater whole that, can really be central, rather than the ego. And of course, it's not easy, it's not a question of not having an ego either. We need a healthy ego. We absolutely need a healthy ego to make our way in this world. So that's a little bit on what kind of put Moshe apart. And I find it really inspiring and really important, that even Moses, even the greatest prophet of all time, came to God and was like, I can't do this. This is too much for me. And one of the hallmarks of that leadership is the way in which from here, he doesn't have to do it alone. And these elders, these wise people are going to help to hold the people with him and to share that burden. So I know for myself, that's certainly a really good lesson. I want to do it all. Definitely learning how to honor my capacity, how to be aware of it and to honor it. And the acknowledging of limitations and asking for help is a huge part of leadership. All right. So thank you again, everyone. Thank you so much for being here and practicing with us today. Thank you for your beautiful reflections and your questions. It's always lovely to welcome in Shabbat with you here on our daily sit on Fridays. I hope that you all have a wonderful Shabbat, and we will see you on Monday.